Hey everybody, welcome to Systems Expert. In this video, we're going to cover the question of designing the Twitch API. Specifically, our interviewer is going to ask us to design every API endpoint that is interacted with when a user is on an individual streamer's channel page on Twitch watching their live stream. So the first thing that I would want to do if I were in an interview like this would be to confirm with my interviewer that I am aware of all the functionality on such a page that they want me to design. If you didn't know anything about Twitch, you would really want to ask a lot of clarifying questions here, and you shouldn't be afraid to tell your interviewer that you're unfamiliar with the platform. Now for me, I am pretty familiar with Twitch, so I'm just going to list off all the things that I can imagine we want to support on the page, and I'm going to write them down as I go and see if my interviewer is okay with that. So the first thing that I think you can do on a streamer's page is you can obviously see all of their kind of static information. So I'll call this maybe just channel information, or we'll say channel info. And this is, the streamer's name, their title, or the title of their stream rather, the description of their channel, how many people are following them, all of this static data. Or not necessarily static, because I suppose follower count does increase, but all of this data that is just kind of descriptive. Then the second thing, speaking of followers, is you can follow or unfollow a streamer on Twitch. So I'll just put follow. Then you can subscribe to a streamer on Twitch. So I'll write subscribe. And subscribing on Twitch is a paid feature. You pay, I think, a monthly fee to subscribe. Then the other big feature on the page is going to be the live chat. So this is a chat box where you have all the viewers of the stream who can chat in real time. They can send messages. You, the user, can send messages. Then there is the actual live stream. So I'll put live stream, and we can maybe say video. So this is kind of the front and center thing on the page. And here you can play the video, you can pause it, you have settings like quality settings. And then there's the number of concurrent viewers. So I'll write concurrent viewers. I know that when you are on a stream, you can see like, oh, how many thousands of viewers are currently watching this? When there are like records being broken, that's always a big center of attention. And then the last thing that I can think about is on the left side of the page, I think that there is some sort of like recommended channels. So I'll write recommended channels that you can see. And usually I think there are other channels that are live and that might be similar to the one that you're watching. So this is all that I can think of. I've written it down on the whiteboard, and I'm going to ask my interviewer, like, is this fine? Is this what we are designing this API for? Now, for this interview, the interviewer is going to tell me that, yes, we're designing all of this, except we can actually forget about the recommended channels. So I'm going to cross this out, maybe scribble it a little bit. We just want to take care of the stuff that's really related to the actual streamer in question. So all of this, all of this. So then the second question that would come to mind for me would be, are there any pieces of information related to each of these things that I've listed out that I might be missing? So one thing that comes to mind is for subscribing. I'm not sure like the different tiers of subscriptions, if there are any. So I would ask my interviewer, can you clarify what exactly subscribing consists of? And so here, my interviewer is going to tell me that there are tiers, there are different like durations of subscriptions and different tiers, but we don't need to worry about that. We can just capture all of that in some sort of arbitrary or opaque entity that we can call subscription info. So maybe I'll write it down here in yellow. We'll put sub info. I'll put this in white. So sub info, and that'll be the entity that we'll use to kind of represent, the settings of a subscription. So then the next question that would come to mind for me would be, obviously there are a lot of things on the page that are happening in real time, that warrant being updated very frequently, like the chat, the video, the number of concurrent viewers, like I said before, maybe even the follow count. I don't think that the follow count gets updated, in real time, but it's worth clarifying. And so here, my interviewer is going to say, yes, like you definitely want the chat to be in real time. The video obviously doesn't make sense otherwise. For the concurrent viewers, my interviewer is going to say that we can just have this number get updated every 30 seconds or so, because we don't want it to be jarring where, every single second you have this number that's going up and down, sometimes by like hundreds or thousands. So every 30 seconds, I'll write that maybe in red. We'll put every 30 seconds. And then for the follow count, they are going to tell me that we don't need to worry about that or updating that in real time. Like I predicted, it's a number that gets updated just whenever you refresh the page. So that's good. Now, this does bring me to one more question about following and subscribing, I suppose, which is that even though we're not updating the follow count in real time, as a user, let's say I see the button like to follow a streamer and I press it, that should make me immediately follow them. And I should immediately see that state or that action reflected on the UI. In other words, the button should go from follow to unfollow. And same for subscribe to unsubscribe. So I'm going to clarify that with my interviewer, ask them if that's correct. And yes, they're going to say you definitely want that instant update or feedback when you're pressing the follow or the subscribe buttons, but you do not need to update those counts in real time. And for subscribe, there isn't even a public subscriber count. So that's good. The next question that I think I would ask would be about the live chat, because there are a few quirks about it. The first one being that I know that on Twitch there are emotes, like custom Twitch emotes, that are not your standard like smiley face or sad face that have a Unicode representation. These are emotes that are only available on Twitch. And there are even some of them that are like animated. I think they're called cheer emotes that you can purchase with bits, which are a virtual currency on Twitch. So I'm going to ask my interviewer, do we need to handle all of this stuff? Or are we just keeping the live chat like very simple? And also, I guess another thing that comes to mind about the live chat is I believe that users can be banned on Twitch, banned from speaking in the chat, like if they're spamming. Do we also want to handle that? And even like moderators, I think there are moderators in the chat. Do we want to handle that? So my interviewer is going to say, for the live chat, we do want to handle normal Twitch emotes. So I'll write that down. I'll put just emotes. We want to handle emotes. But then they're going to say, you don't need to worry about like bits, the virtual currency. You can disregard that altogether. So no animated emotes. We don't need to worry about emotes that are only available to subscribers. So here for these emotes, we're really talking about just like the emotes that are available to all Twitch users. And then they're going to say, we want to handle the banned status. So I'll put emotes / banned. We want to handle that. And what that means is if a user is banned, indeed, they cannot send messages, and they should also be alerted on the UI that they're banned. Like they should have a visual indicator that they're banned. And then the moderators, they're going to say we don't need to handle moderators. That's just kind of out of the scope for this question. So we'll just forget that. We're not even going to write it down. So that is good for the chat. One more question that I would have, I think, if I were in an interview, would be about the video, because quite frankly, I'm not super familiar with how live videos work on the web, especially at scale and high quality. So here I'm going to ask my interviewer. I'm going to tell them that, and I'm going to say, is it fair to assume that the backend is going to be able to provide us with some sort of video info data or entity that contains the data that the UI needs to display the live video? And here our interviewer is going to say, yes, that's perfectly fine. So I'll write that down. Actually, I'll write video info. video info, and they say don't worry about the underlying complexity about or related to live video. Like, that's not what this interview is about. We just care about the API. And you'll have access to this video info from the backend continuously. Okay, so that is really good. That gives me, I believe, everything that I need to start tackling this interview. And at this point, it's always good to come up with a plan, like to structure how you're going to approach the interview, or what parts of the design you're going to cover first. Here, I think we're kind of lucky because like the endpoints or all the parts of functionality on the page have kind of given us a good outline. Like, I think we can basically go from the top, starting here, and go all the way to the bottom. Maybe we'll have to handle a couple of quirks along the way, but this seems like a good outline to go with and a good plan of action. So that's what I'm going to do. And I will say one thing that I think will apply to basically all of the API endpoints that we're going to design is, first of all, I think that every API endpoint by default will take in a user-specific authentication token, which will pass in as like an authorization header in every request that we make. This will be used by the backend to obviously authenticate the user, but also to just know what user is making these API calls. And I think that that's a kind of a clean way to capture that, so that we don't actually have to pass it as a specific parameter like in every API endpoint. It'll be kind of done under the hood, behind the scenes on the UI. So maybe I'll just write that down at the top here. We'll put like user token passed by default. Passed by default. Okay, so then the second thing that I wanted to mention that I think is going to relate to all these API endpoints is all of them are related to the channel in question, right? Like channel info, you're following the channel, the live chat of the channel. So every API endpoint is going to take in as an explicit first parameter a channel ID, and I guess I'll write it down when I actually write down the API endpoints. And this channel ID will be also a unique ID. It'll be a string, and I think we can just go with like a Twitch username, because Twitch usernames are unique. So, what's a popular streamer on Twitch? Let's go with Ninja, right? Ninja is a popular streamer on Twitch. If you were making any of the API calls that we're going to be calling or designing on Ninja's stream, you would pass in the string Ninja as the channel ID. So that's how we're gonna go or do this for these endpoints. So on that note, let's dive into the first endpoint, which is going to be the one that supports the channel information functionality. So I think this should be pretty simple. Let me give myself a bit of space here, and I will write these endpoints. We'll write them maybe in red. So we'll have this endpoint will be very straightforward, because all it's doing is getting descriptive information about the channel, and this is going to be called once when the page loads, and it's going to be used to display all that information. So we'll call this get channel info. So get channel info, and this is going to take in a channel ID. So we'll put the parameters in yellow. So we'll put channel ID. This is exactly what I just talked about with the Ninja example. This is going to be a string, and this an endpoint is going to return an entity called channel info. And this entity, maybe I'll just define it like right below here. So this is kind of all pseudocode, right? Channel info is going to have, a name. It's going to have, a current, like a description. So I'll put desk. It's going to have a current stream title. I'll just put cur, str for stream title. It's going to have a follower count, and that's all I can think of for now for the static stuff. But these are all going to be strings. So I'll put str, str, and this is going to be an int. And yeah, this is the first endpoint, pretty straightforward, just gets the channel info and then is used to display it on the page. So then the next piece of functionality that we want to support is going to be following. So following is pretty straightforward also, right? You just follow and unfollow. Now, there are a few ways that we could go about designing this. One would be to have two separate endpoints, one called follow channel or follow, and one called unfollow. I think that that's a little bit overkill because this is a binary action. In other words, like there are only two states, right? If you are following, then the only thing that you can do is unfollow, and same, for vice versa. So the other option would be to just have a single endpoint called like set follow state, and it would take in like the actual state that you want to set the thing to. So it would take in like following or unfollowing. But again, I think that even that is a little bit overkill or is just a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. I think that we can just go with toggle, like a toggle functionality, where the backend will just know what's stored, in their database, and the backend will set the user's follow state to the opposite of what is stored in the database. So that's what we're going to go with, and I'm going to call this toggle follow. So toggle follow. And it's going to take in, I believe, a channel ID because we are, toggling the follow for a particular channel. I'll go with str again here. And the toggle follow is going to return probably like the follow state that the backend returns. So we'll put, follow state. And here, this will be, either I'll put it maybe in right below, it'll be an enum, right, where it's either like following, or maybe I'll put to not have to write all this down, it'll be following or unfollowing, right? That's what I'll do here. So following or unfollowing, two possible states. Now, one thing to note is that this endpoint here, toggle follow, does not yet cover how we will know which button to display on the UI for the user. In other words, at this point, we don't know if a user is following and therefore should be shown the unfollow button, or whether they are not following and therefore they should be shown the follow button. That's kind of like the state information about the user is not something that we've gotten in the channel info. The channel info is all stuff purely related to the streamer. So just keep that in mind, and we're going to cover that a little bit later, probably at the end of this design, because I think we're going to have a couple of other things that are kind of related to the user, some sort of like relationship between the user and the streamer. Okay, so now we can move to subscribing. So subscribing is actually very similar to following, but a little bit different because it is a binary action, but there is a little bit more that you have to provide the endpoint with, right? You have to provide the subscription info, at least when you are subscribing, because like we said before, there are going to be tiers and durations, things like that. You also have to provide like payment details, whether you're paying with a credit card or with PayPal, or maybe like bits that you've purchased on Twitch, if that's even doable. So I think for subscription, we're not going to complicate ourselves with some sort of toggle functionality. We probably wouldn't even be able to do it, or would be very unclean. We are going to go with two endpoints. One is going to be create subscription, and one is going to be cancel subscription. So pretty straightforward. Let me just put hyphens here so that we know like all the things that we're covering. So here we'll put a third hyphen. So it's going to be create subscription, and I will simplify it as create sub. This is going to take in a channel ID as usual, channel ID, which is going to be a string. It's going to take in a sub info or subscription info. I'll go with sub for short here while I write it. Sub info, which is a sub info. We said we don't need to define sub info, the type. We can just treat this as like a an arbitrary entity for now. And then it's going to take in a payment info. I'll just write pay info, which is going to be also a big entity that we don't need to define, pay info. And pay info, again, is like going to be just all the details about the payment method. And so this is going to return probably some sort of subscription entity. Here I would probably clarify with my interviewer, like, do you want me to define this entity, subscription? They would say no, because like we said before, there are all sorts of things like tiers, duration, time remaining, stuff like that. And time remaining would probably be just determinable based on like the duration of the sub, or maybe when it was started, all sorts of details like that. But so then the second endpoint we need for the subscription is going to be the counterpart to this, which is going to be cancel sub. Cancel, forgot the E, cancel sub. And this is also going to take in a channel ID, but I don't think that we need to take in anything else, because you can only have one sub at a time on a particular stream. So there's nothing that you need to, you don't need to necessarily pass in more state. I don't think you need to pass in the sub info to canceling the subscription. So we're just going to go with that. And this would also return a sub, because, why not? It's nice to have whatever the resulting state from the backend is being returned. I will say, once again, just like with the follow endpoint, we have not yet handled how we are going to know to display subscribe or unsubscribe as the button text. In other words, this doesn't take care of the state that the user is currently in. It's just the actual, functionality. We'll take care of the state a little bit later. So the next thing that I think we can cover is going to be the chat. So the live chat. So let's see. For the live chat, we have two pieces of functionality, right? We want to be able to see the chat and see all the messages that are coming in, but we also want to be able to send messages ourselves. And we want to handle emotes and also the banning feature, right? If we're banned from the chat. So let me give myself a little bit of space here. I think the first thing that we're going to want to do is have some sort of entity, like a message entity, because I guess we should think about this. Like, is a message just an arbitrary string, or is there more metadata around a message? Well, there is probably more metadata, right? Because there's metadata about who sent the message, because you need to display the username next to the message. There's metadata about like maybe the timestamp of the message, because you probably need to display like when the message was sent, the exact timestamp. I do think that the message itself, like the text, including the emotes, can be just strings, because like if you think about it, we can probably elegantly design this emotes or represent Twitch emotes in some special string format, right? So like, maybe I'll write it here. We can have Twitch emotes be a special string format that the UI knows to detect and to then display as the emotes. And I think that's what we'll do. So, maybe we'll wrap every emote. Every emote will have like a unique string ID. And then every emote will be wrapped in, let's say, like 2 colons. So, the most popular emote on Twitch, Kappa, we're going to have 2 colons. So colons, Kappa, colon. And if someone were to write this in the chat, the Kappa emote would get displayed or rendered. And if the UI detected a string that had these characters in it, the UI would render the related emote. And so the UI would probably store some sort of emote table or something like that. Or maybe it would be hard-coded in the UI, probably not, probably would be fed by the backend. But so, yeah, an actual string would be like, let's write a full string here. This is fun, Kappa, colon, end string, right? So this might be a message on Twitch that the UI would be able to interpret as having an emote here. So, okay, going back to our actual endpoints, we are going to have two endpoints. We'll cover the first one, which is going to be, let's say, sending a message, maybe. Or actually, let's go with the other one first, streaming the messages. So here, streaming messages, stream messages. This, as the name indicates, is going to be an endpoint that effectively like opens a long-lived WebSocket connection such that we can stream continuously all the messages that are coming in to this Twitch stream. I know that I'm repeating the word stream a lot, but you get the idea. And maybe we'll even call this stream chat to be a little bit more relevant to how we had determined or named the feature before. So stream chat, and this is going to take in just a channel ID. So channel ID. The endpoint is called once on page load, and then it simply returns a stream of messages. So message is going to be an entity that we define. I'll put this as I'll define it here. So there's going to be maybe the sender. So the sender is going to be, let's write this in, did we have it in blue? No, we had it in yellow. So we'll put this in yellow, sender, and this is going to be just a string for the username of the sender. So sender, string, then we're going to have maybe text. Text is going to be a string, and so here this would be like the example that we had before with capo, that would be the text, and then maybe we'll have timestamp, and this is going to be also a string, I think, but we can say that it's going to be an ISO like date format so that the UI can recognize this and render the time that this message was sent at accordingly. So one thing that we should probably note is that the UI is going to want to not render messages that are sent by the user that is currently watching the stream. In other words, if I send a message on Twitch, we're going to immediately render that message that I send when I press like enter, but then that message will be received through this endpoint as well, and we don't want to duplicate it on the UI. So here, the UI will be smart enough to filter out messages that were sent by the person currently using the UI. The second endpoint that we need here is going to be send message. So we'll call this send message. And let's see, what is this going to take? So it's going to take a channel ID, as usual. Like I said, I think all these endpoints take in a channel ID. Channel ID. And then it's going to take in, I believe, a message, right? So it's going to take in a message. And here, let's see, do we want this message to be... Here, I think that there are a couple ways to do this, right? Either the message is an actual, message entity where we pass in the sender, but we have the sender in our authentication token. And the timestamp, but the timestamp, I'm thinking that we probably want the backend to handle the timestamping because, if the message never reaches the backend, then, the message has not actually been sent effectively. So I think that the true timestamp is when the backend receives the message. So I think the backend will handle timestamping messages. And so here I think we can actually just get away with making this a string and not a message entity. But this is obviously something that you would want to explain to your interviewer and maybe have a discussion with them. Maybe they would disagree with you here and ask you or, throw like other curveballs at you. I think a string makes sense here for the reasons that I gave. And then this is going to return probably a string, I think. So unlike stream chat, which returned a message, I think here we can just get away again with returning a string because all that we need to render when we're sending the message is, we just need to render the string that we sent ourselves, and we need to handle, and then we have our own username and our own timestamp to show ourselves. And to be honest, we're not even going to rely on the resulting string to send. We're probably just going to immediately render the string that we passed in as a message here, and then show an error if there was an error afterwards. Like if this endpoint ends up failing, only then would we show an error. So an error message would be kind of delayed, whereas the actual string that we submitted in the chat would be rendered immediately for us, the user. One thing to keep in mind here, though, is that this send message API, I'll actually write out the fact that it can return an error. And here, this error, I'm not even talking about like a network error or something like that. I'm talking about an error if the user is banned from the chat. So in the event that the user is banned and cannot send messages, but somehow calls this endpoint, we want to throw an error. Now, I think we were told before when we asked questions that we want to be able to alert the user that they're banned and basically prevent them from sending a message, because I think the chat actually says like, you are banned. So this should never happen in theory. Perhaps this only happens if the user is already on the stream and gets banned while on the stream, but it's something that we still want to have, of course. So at this point, I think we might be done with the chat, and I think we can move on to the video, so the actual live stream video, and then we are getting close to being done. So I'll write it out here. This is actually going to be like surprisingly simple. I feel like it's the most daunting of the pieces of functionality just because it's live video and all that, but it's actually kind of straightforward since we were given that arbitrary video info entity that we can use. So this is going to be stream video. This is going to be another one of these endpoints that opens a long-lived WebSocket connection. We call this endpoint on page load. We pass in the channel ID, which is going to be a string, and we probably pass in also like some other parameters. The only one that I can think of for now is video quality, so I'll write that down. Video, we'll put qual, and this is going to be, let's just go with another entity called video qual. And here, you can imagine this might be like an enum or something that has 1080p or quality like from the source or whatever the qualities are on Twitch, right? And so this stream video endpoint is going to just return the video info entity that we were told about earlier. And that is about it. When a user pauses the video, we're going to still stream the video. Like, we're not going to be interrupting any of this when we pause the video. The only thing is the UI is going to stop displaying the video or rendering it. And once the user presses play, the UI resumes with wherever we are at here with the video info that's being given to us. One thing to keep in mind for stream video is that when a user starts streaming the video, they become a concurrent viewer, right? They become an official viewer of the stream, and they should be counted in that number that we said we're going to want to display on the UI, the number of concurrent viewers. So I think that what we're going to want to do is have the backend, whenever this long-lived WebSocket connection gets opened from the stream video endpoint, the backend is going to increase the number of concurrent viewers for the particular streamer in some sort of database. And it's out of the scope of this question to determine what database it is. Maybe it's a key value store, maybe it's the SQL table, who knows? But it's going to increase the number of concurrent viewers. And then once this connection gets interrupted, either because the user leaves the page or they close their browser tab or their computer or whatever, the backend will decrease the number of concurrent viewers by 1. And so this brings us to the final piece of functionality, or one of the final ones, which is the concurrent viewers. And this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to call this get concurrent, I'll just write get conc viewers. And this is going to take in, yet again, just a channel ID. So pretty straightforward. This is going to be one of those like method or endpoints that is just super simple and returns like one value. We'll call it an integer because it's just a number that we have to show. And this endpoint will be pulled by the UI roughly every 30 seconds because we said that we want to display this number or an update to this number roughly every 30 seconds. So we can just continuously pull it every 30 seconds. And then, the UI can decide if they want to do something fancy. Because I think that right now on Twitch, like when you see the number of concurrent viewers get updated, it kind of does a cool looking animation that looks like it's kind of, increasing, number by number, but that's all UI based, right? That's not from the back end. So that's going to be it for this endpoint. The final piece of functionality that we haven't yet covered, which I forgot, because I claimed that this was going to be the final one, is all the state. Remember at the beginning when we were doing subscribing and following, I mentioned that we hadn't yet covered how the UI knows what buttons to show. Do we show follow? Do we show unfollow? Subscribe, unsubscribe? And then similarly, for banning, right? In the chat, we said we need to show the user that they are banned. If I go on a Twitch stream and I've been already banned, I need to see that I'm banned, and the box for the chat needs to be grayed out or something. So how do we handle this? I'm going to give myself a little bit of space. We're going to go back up here. I think that there are a few ways that we can handle this. Actually, two probably come to mind. The first one, specifically for following and subscribing, is we could fetch the information of our own user, which is something that we probably do when you go on the Twitch page, right? You probably fetch profile information about yourself so that you can see, I don't know how many followers you have in the top right corner, things like that. And in that response, you would probably get all the people or streamers that you are followed to and all of the streamers that you are subscribed to, or rather following and subscribed to. And so if you have those users, right, then you can use that against the name of the Twitch streamer that you're currently watching, which is going to be, from the channel info, like we have this right here. And we also have it probably from the URL because, it's also like the channel ID, I believe. I think name and channel ID might be the same. But so you could do that and match to see, is this name in my list of streamers that I'm following or that I'm subscribing to? And based on that, you would show the correct text in the various buttons. Now, the one problem with that is that, in theory, you could be following thousands or hundreds of thousands of streamers and even subscribed to thousands of them. Very unlikely, especially for a paid subscription, but in theory, it could be possible. And so, it's likely that we would want to paginate those responses. We would want to have a paginated list of streamers that you're subscribed to and streamers that you're following. And if it were a paginated list, it kind of complicates this a little bit. So in view of that, and in view of the fact that we still need the banned thing, we still haven't covered the banned thing, I think that my approach to solving this problem will be to have a brand new endpoint altogether that is going to be called getRelationship to channel. So I'll actually write it up here. Get relationship, I'll just put rel to channel. And this is going to take in, you guessed it, our classic channel ID. Channel ID, which is going to be a string. And it's going to return a rel to channel entity. And this entity is going to have all of the information that defines the relationship of us, the user, to the streamer. So for the sake of our current design, this is going to be just 3 things, but maybe there are more that I'm not thinking about. Maybe this is where the moderator status comes into play for the chat. Actually, that probably seems like a good way to know whether we're a moderator. And by the way, for moderators, I suppose that in the message entity before, where you had the sender, perhaps you would also have is moderator or something like that. to show that other users are moderators. But anyways, I divagate. So here, this entity is going to have, is banned, and this is going to be a bool. I should have done this in yellow, so let me just do it for the sake of consistency. Is banned, this is going to be a bool, and this is going to be used for the chat. Then we're going to have is following, also a bool. And then you might have is subscribed, or maybe you're going to have maybe for subscription, we go with an actual subscription. So subscription, this means the subscription that you have to this channel. And this is either a sub, which is the type that we had right down here, right, when we create a sub or when we cancel a sub, or null in the case that there is no sub, you're not subscribed. And that's it. And then maybe, again, we would add moderator status or some other form of relationship between you and the streamer. So that is how I would handle it. Like I said before, I explained why I would do it this way rather than the other way, where you just get your own channel info and you compare who you're following and who you're subscribing to the name of the streamer. I think this is a little bit more elegant, removes the pagination issue, also handles is banned, also handles other potential things like moderator status. And yeah, so I feel pretty satisfied with this. And on that note, I think that this covers all of the functionality that we needed to design. We've certainly handled a lot of functionality with all of these endpoints. I would ask my interviewer, does this seem good? Is there anything that I'm missing? And at this point, our interviewer is going to say, this is great, you're not missing anything, and we can conclude the interview. So on that note, I hope that you found this video helpful and informative, and I'll see you in the next one.